A gentle summer night breeze caressed my face as I stepped out of the elevator, a little nervous but full of expectation. The rooftop of the elegant building in Manhattan stretched out before me like a postcard, with the city illuminated below, vibrant and full of life. I had always loved that view. The glow of the lights reflected the energy I felt inside me, a mix of accomplishment and a subtle touch of melancholy. It was the launch party for my interior design company's new collection, and I was determined to make the most of every moment. "Julia, you made it." Clara's cheerful voice pulled me back to reality. She was radiant, wearing a red dress that seemed to shine in the moonlight. "Hi, Clara. I can't believe I made this happen," I replied, smiling. "Look at this view. It's breathtaking, isn't it? And you deserve it all. Let's toast to your success." Clara raised a glass of champagne, and I did the same, feeling the bubbles of the sparkling liquid rise through my body, bringing a sense of lightness. As the party began, I felt increasingly at ease. Conversations flowed, laughter echoed, and upbeat music filled the air. But amid the celebration, a shadow of nostalgia settled in my heart. It was inevitable to remember how, on a similar night years ago, I danced to a melody that would change my life forever. The echo of that song resonated in my mind, and I couldn't help but think of Nick. "Hey, Julia! Look over there!" Clara interrupted my thoughts, pointing to the dance floor where people were moving with enthusiasm. "Let's dance a little." "Sure, let's go." I followed her, but my mind still wandered back to the past. Nick, with his charming smile and guitar always within reach, made me feel like love was something eternal. I remembered our sunny days in the park, the promises we exchanged under the blue sky, and how everything felt so perfect. The music changed, and a familiar melody began to play. My heart stopped for an instant. It was that song, the one we used to listen to together, the one that always made me feel alive. Instantly, I was transported back to the summer of my youth, where the laughter and knowing glances of Nick filled my memory. The intensity of our love, the promises of a future together, all resurfaced like a tidal wave. "Julia, are you okay?" Clara asked, noticing my distant expression. "I'm just remembering some things," I replied, trying to smile, but nostalgia was consuming me. "Oh, you and your romantic memories. You know, I've always thought you should call him," Clara suggested with a curious look. No, that's the past," I said, cutting off the conversation. "I've moved on." He must have moved on too. But a part of me questioned if that was really true. Did Nick still remember me? Did he also have those memories tucked away in a special place? The music continued to play, and I lost myself in thought as the guests danced around me, oblivious to the emotional turmoil unfolding within me. The party continued to be lively, but I was in a state of contemplation, battling the emotions the song evoked. The promises of eternal love we made seemed to echo in every note, bringing forth the pain of separation, the choices that led us down different paths. I wondered if, somehow, there still existed a connection between us, an invisible thread that bound us across time. "Julia!" Clara pulled me back again, interrupting my daydream.
Come dance.
"Sure, I'm coming." I smiled, but the music kept playing, and the memories of Nick still danced in my mind. The captivating music playing in the background seemed to blend with my racing heart as my restless gaze searched for Nick in the crowd. The time that had passed since the last time I saw him faded away, and the image of him, now a mature and charismatic man, sent a whirlwind of emotions through me. The smile he wore was contagious, yet it made me nervous at the same time. How could I have let the years separate us? The memory of our moments together was still alive in my mind, a flame that never completely extinguished. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. "It's just a reunion," I told myself, as if that could calm the hurricane of feelings forming in my chest. Even so, hesitation took hold of me. The memories of our painful breakup haunted me. I didn't want to relive the hurt. I didn't want to expose myself to a new wound. But at the same time, curiosity and hope intertwined, pulling me toward him. "Julia!" The familiar voice cut through the air, and I almost jumped at the sound. It was as if he had read my thoughts. Nick was closer now, his eyes shining with a mix of surprise and joy. "I can't believe it's you." Sadness and happiness merged into a single emotion. "Hey, Nick. It's good to see you." I tried to sound casual, but the tremor in my voice betrayed my vulnerability. He moved closer, and the scent of his cologne was intoxicating, bringing forth memories I was trying to bury. "You still look as beautiful as I remember," he said, and a thrill of nerves caught me off guard. "What have you been up to?" "Oh, you know how it is. Life in New York, always on the move. I work as an interior designer now." I gestured, trying to project an image of confidence, but the words seemed to dissipate into the air. "Wow, that's amazing." He smiled, and I couldn't help but notice how his laugh lines told stories of a man who had also faced challenges. "And you? What have you been doing? I've heard rumors about your music." Nick hesitated. A flicker of something deeper crossed his gaze. "The music? Well, it's been a tough journey. I had to deal with some things that pulled me away from what I really love." He took a deep breath, as if years of choices weighed heavily on him. "But every time I think of you, I feel like the music starts to make sense again." Those words struck me. It was as if he were inviting me back into his life, to rewrite what was left unfinished. "I'm sorry for everything that happened," I said, the words coming out like a whisper. "It was hard. For both of us." "Yeah," he agreed, looking down for a moment. "But sometimes, life takes us down paths we don't understand at the time. I've never stopped thinking about you, Julia." Those words hit me like a lightning bolt. The world around us seemed to fade away, and all I could see was Nick, the man I once loved, and perhaps still loved. The weight of his confessions made me feel a mix of relief and fear. What did this mean for us now? "Nick, The phrase got caught in my throat. The fear of opening up, of exposing my heart again, was almost paralyzing. But at the same time, there was a spark of hope beginning to shine. "I know it's not easy," he said, interrupting my thoughts. "But, Julia, the music we had back then still resonates within me. And I'd like to know if you feel the same." Looking into his eyes, I realized there was a connection that transcended time and pain. The past had taught us so much, and now, in front of him, I knew the choice to move forward or go back was in my hands. And as insecure as I felt, there was a part of me that longed to take the risk. The atmosphere around us seemed to transform into a space where only Nick and I existed. The rooftop lights shone like stars, and the distant sound of the party blended with the beat of my heart. I felt like we were in a world apart, far from the expectations and the paths we had followed. "It's amazing how time passes, isn't it?" Nick began, his eyes fixed on mine, with a brightness I hadn't seen in years. "It feels like just yesterday we were dancing under those Christmas lights, in the rain." I smiled, recalling that moment. It was such a vivid memory that I could almost feel the cold drops of rain falling on us as we danced carefree. "And you always stepped on my foot," I teased, trying to break the tension that hung between us. "I never knew if that was your way of keeping me close or if you really couldn't dance." He laughed, a sound that washed over me like a wave of nostalgia. "Actually, I was just trying not to fall into those puddles. We always had so much fun." The conversation flowed naturally, as if time hadn't passed at all. We talked about our dreams, our experiences, and the little things that had marked us over the years. But the lightness soon gave way to a weight I noticed he carried. "You know, Julia," he began, his voice now deeper, "music has always been my passion. But honestly, it hasn't been easy. For years, I had to fight against difficulties, and many times I felt lost. I felt my heart tighten. How had I not known this? Nick had always been so talented, so full of life. The man I had known in my youth seemed so distant, as if he had lost his way along the path. "What happened?" I asked, unable to contain my curiosity. He sighed, as if he were trying to organize his thoughts before sharing. "I went through a time when everything seemed to crumble. I made some wrong choices, and that pulled me away from music, from you." He hesitated, and I could see the pain in his eyes. "When you stepped away, I found myself lost. The music I loved became a constant reminder of what I had lost. Guilt began to consume me. I had moved on, built a life and a career, while he struggled with his demons. What could I have done? Had my departure contributed to his pain? Nick, I choked, not knowing how to express what I felt. The truth was that I felt guilty for moving on, for leaving everything behind while he was still fighting. "No, don't feel that way, Julia." He interrupted me, sensing my internal conflict. "You had your own dreams. I never wanted you to stop for me. But what if I had stayed? I questioned, my voice almost a whisper. What if I had fought by your side? He shook his head, a sad smile on his lips. What's done is done. We need to look ahead, not back. But honestly, I never stopped loving music. And, in a way, I never stopped loving you. The weight of his words hung in the air between us, and I didn't know how to react. The memories of our young love, the promises we made, all felt so close yet so far away at the same time. I began, but the words failed me. What could I say? That I still desired him? That my heart still beat for him? What do you want, Julia? He asked, his voice low yet firm. I wanted so many things. I wanted to go back in time, to be the girl who danced with him in the rain, but I also wanted to understand who I was now. The truth was that the connection between us still existed, and that scared me. I don't know, I finally admitted, feeling the tears welling up. I don't know what I want, but being here with you makes me question everything. The party continued to pulse around us, but Nick and I found a small refuge in a quieter corner of the rooftop. The city lights shone like stars, and the sound of the music felt like a distant whisper, almost as if time were slowing down. I looked at him. The familiarity in his gaze made me feel as if it were just the two of us there, ignoring everything else. Remember that time you played at the corner bar, and I was screaming your name from the back? I laughed, the memory bringing a warm comfort. Nick smiled, a smile that reached his eyes, and I realized he still had the same essence of the boy I had loved. How could I forget? You made me feel like I was at a big show. He shook his head, clearly amused. I never understood how you managed to make me feel so special in that place. It was easy. You were always special to me, I said, without thinking. The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Nick looked away for a moment, as if processing my words. I've always loved music, Julia. It's always been my escape. He began, his voice more serious now. But after we separated, I lost a bit of that love. Music stopped being a refuge and became a reminder of the pain I felt. I didn't know if I could play again. He sighed, and I saw the vulnerability in his gaze. Nick, I didn't know you were going through that. I always thought you were moving on, building your career. I said, my voice soft, trying to capture the essence of what he was sharing. Moving on is more complicated than it seems. He replied, the sadness in his voice resonating within me. I made some wrong choices, and that pulled me away from what I truly loved. Sometimes, I wonder if you still remember who I was before all of this. Of course I remember. You're an incredible musician. You always were. I replied, the sincerity in my words surprising me. And I'm grateful for all the memories we had. They helped me become who I am today. Nick smiled sadly, as if he had found a bit of solace in my words. I've been trying to play again, but the truth is, the music was never the same without you around. I always imagined what it would be like if we were together again, but the fear of failing paralyzed me. The weight of his revelation fell upon us, and I found myself lost in thought. It wasn't just about what happened in the past, it was about what could be now. Nick, I've faced challenges in my career too. Many times, I thought about giving up. But music has always been a part of me, just like you. He looked at me intently, as if trying to read my thoughts. What do you mean by that? I mean that I feel like there's still something between us. Something that was never fully resolved. I said, my heart racing. Sometimes, I wonder if it's worth the risk again. You're still the same person I knew, but we are different now. Maybe that's part of what we need to face, Julia. To grow and change, but still find a way back to each other. Nick replied, his voice soft like a melody. I took a deep breath, feeling the intensity of the moment. He was right. What happened in the past couldn't be changed, but what I felt for him was still there, latent, waiting to be explored again. I looked out at the city lights below, thinking about all my choices, about what I truly wanted. What if we tried? The question slipped from my mouth before I could hold it back. Tried again. The music, you and me. Maybe we can find a new beginning. Nick stared at me, his eyes shining with a mix of hope and uncertainty. Do you really think that's possible? After everything that happened? Sometimes, the best things come from the most unexpected situations. And I don't want to live with regrets anymore, I said, my heart wide open. What I didn't know was that this conversation was just the beginning of a path that would lead me to rediscover not only Nick but myself. The music changed, and a special song started playing, the one we used to listen to together on a sunny summer day. The gentle melodic rhythm enveloped me like a warm embrace, a wave of nostalgia that made me close my eyes for a moment. I felt my heart race, and when I opened my eyes, I saw Nick looking at me with a smile that lit up his face. It was as if time had rolled back, and we were back in that carefree time, full of promises and dreams. "Do you remember this song?" he asked, his tone soft, almost a whisper, as if he feared breaking the enchantment that surrounded us. "How could I forget?" I replied, involuntarily smiling. "It was our favorite." Nick extended his hand, and without thinking twice, I placed mine in his. The connection was instant, as if no barrier had risen between us over the years. He pulled me closer, and we began to dance, lost in our own bubble, while the world around us faded away. "You still dance like you used to," he said, laughing, as he guided me in a familiar step. "I've always admired the way you move." "Oh, Nick, you've always been an excellent dancer," I replied, trying to hide the nervousness growing inside me. He was so close, and the familiar scent of his cologne made me feel a mix of happiness and fear. The fear of letting myself go again, of opening my heart to something that could hurt me. Time seemed to stop. I felt young again, free of worries, as if we were in a bubble untouched by time. But as the music progressed, reality began to seep back into our thoughts. "Julia," he began, his voice more serious now, "I don't know how you feel, but I've always thought about you. Always." I felt my heart race. What was he saying? Was it an invitation? A request? The music kept playing, but his words echoed in my mind like an endless echo. "Nick, I've thought about you too," I replied, hesitantly, trying to find the right words. "But our lives, they've been so different." "I know," he said, his penetrating gaze holding mine. "But that doesn't change what I feel. Music has always been my way of dealing with the longing, and you were always there, in every note." Before I could respond, a deafening crash interrupted our moment. A group of people in the corner of the party began to stir, and soon the tension spread throughout the space. The music was drowned out by shouts and nervous laughter, and the light atmosphere that surrounded us was replaced by confusion. "Let's move away a bit," Nick suggested, trying to pull me away from the commotion. But I was paralyzed, caught between the urge to run and the need to stay right there. "Nick, I tried to speak, but the words were lost in the growing noise around us. He looked at me, worried, and for a moment, I felt the connection again. But reality imposed itself. I wanted to confess my feelings, but now it seemed impossible. The party was not the right place, and the turmoil around us left me more confused. "Let's go over there," he insisted, pointing to a calmer corner of the rooftop. And without knowing how, I let him guide me, my heart still racing, but now mixed with a knot of anxiety. As soon as we reached a quieter space, the music still echoed in the background, but now it was just a distant murmur. Nick held my hands, and I looked into his eyes, searching for answers to the questions swirling in my mind. The chaos of the party seemed insignificant next to the intensity of the moment we were experiencing. "Julia, I don't want this to end," he said, his look sincere and vulnerable. "We need to talk about us." The uncertainty wrapped around me. What did I really want? What did us mean after so long? As the music continued to play, I found myself in a dilemma between the past and the present, between what could be and what had already been. And, for a moment, all I knew was that, looking at Nick, hope was reborn in my chest, even amidst the chaos around us. The confusion at the party left me dazed. The voices and laughter that once filled the space now turned into shouts and pushes. I stepped away from Nick, feeling my mind spin like an uncontrolled carousel. I looked out at the Manhattan skyline, the city lights blinking as if trying to remind me that I was still here, living. But amid the chaos, a wave of insecurity washed over me. What did I really want? What was I willing to risk? I felt a presence beside me, and when I turned, I saw Nick approaching, his expression concerned. He seemed to want to protect me from the chaos, as if he were still that boy who always cared about my well-being. "Julia, are you okay?" he asked, his voice heavy with concern. "I'm just a little scared with all of this," I replied, trying to force a smile, but the truth was that my heart was in an internal conflict. How could I have let myself be swept away by such intense emotions? Nick took a step closer, and I could feel his warmth. "I don't want you to feel this way. Let's go somewhere calmer." His hand reached out towards me, a silent invitation that I knew I couldn't refuse. His touch was familiar yet electrifying. As we walked away from the commotion, he seemed to hesitate, as if searching for the right words. Finally, he stopped and looked into my eyes. "Julia, there's something I need to tell you," he began. The seriousness in his voice made me hold my breath. "I never stopped loving you. Even after everything, you've always been in my heart." His words echoed in my mind, and I felt a mix of surprise and joy. "Nick, I tried to articulate, but the emotion nearly stopped me from continuing. He interrupted me. "I know time has passed and that our lives have taken different paths, but I've always waited for a moment like this. I've always dreamed of finding you again and telling you how I felt." He paused, his penetrating gaze disarming me. "Music has always been my escape, but you are what truly inspires me." My heart raced. I remembered all the melodies he used to play for me, as if each chord were an unfulfilled promise. But before I could process everything, Nick continued. "I'm about to go on a tour back to my home state. I'm going to reconnect with the music that made me happy, with everything I left behind. And I would like you to come with me." The proposal caught me off guard. A part of me wanted to scream yes, that I was ready for this new adventure, but another part hesitated. "Nick, it's very sudden. I have my life here, my job, everything I've built," I replied, trying to find a balance between reason and what I felt. "I understand, Julia. But think of this as an opportunity. A chance to rediscover not only the music but us too. You've always been an important part of my life, and who knows what we can discover together now." He stepped a little closer. The sincerity in his eyes was undeniable. I felt a wave of nostalgia. The music playing in the background was a song that always united us, and in that moment, I realized that some connections never break. What I feared was the possibility of losing again something that could be so beautiful. I looked at Nick, and something inside me shifted. Life is about taking risks, and maybe this was mine. "Let's do it," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "Let's rewrite our story." Nick's smile lit up his face, and there, under the Manhattan sky, I realized that love can be redemptive, and that sometimes, what we need most is the courage to follow the call of our hearts.
Hi, you are on the Moving Narratives channel. Subscribe and follow our stories.